Hi friends! I have a special guest today here with me today to read you a story. Seeing how the question was about bears today, if you had a teddy bear, I thought it'd be nice to read a story about a bear and have a teddy bear with us. Now I tried to find my teddy bear that I had when I was a little girl, but I remembered I gave it to my daughter. So today we are going to use this teddy bear. And this teddy bear belongs to my granddaughter, Ella Grace. While we read, I'm going to put this teddy bear over here so they can listen to our story too. Our story today is called Bears Don't Read by Emma Chichester Clark. Do bears read? Does your teddy bear read? Do you read? Let's find out. Here it is. Bears don't read. Holding a book. Most days, George sat on a bench at the edge of the woods and stared out in the distant hills. He wondered about life. Oh, life is lovely, he thought. Tra-la-la-la-la, and all that. But is this it? He wondered. Is this all there is? There's George in the woods, sitting on the bench. Do you think George wants to do more than just sit in the woods? His brothers and his sisters never wondered about anything. They were perfectly happy, chatting, fishing, doing all the usual bear things, and telling the same old stories over and over again. But George was bored. He didn't want to do the usual bear things anymore. He wanted other things. But what? He wondered. So here's George. Over here. He's watching. Has his brothers and his sisters doing the bear things. Oh, catching fish for dinner. Then one day, as George was strolling through the forest, he found a book lying beneath a tree. Somebody must have lost it, he thought. How interesting. Inside it, there were pictures of a bear just like him. And on the other pages, there was lots and lots of words. Each one, even the tiny ones, is saying something, he thought. If only I knew what it was. And this bear is having an exciting life, not like mine. George sighed, but then he had a brilliant idea. He rushed home to tell the others. There's George. There's that book. Found it under a tree. Oh, he loves that book. I'm going to town to find the owner of this book and ask them to teach me to read, he said. You don't want to go there, said his brother. They don't like bears in town. But I want to learn to read, said George. Well, that's just silly, said his sister. Bears don't read. Why can't you be happy doing normal bear things? But George would not be put off. He waved goodbye, and he headed towards the long road into the town with the book under his arm. Here he is. Off he goes, with the book, headed to town. George walked for a whole day and a whole night, stopping to rest on a grassy hill under the sparkling sky. Before he slept, he opened the book again and he gazed at the words. Already he felt that the world was a more interesting place. I'm going to show you this page. See? It's nighttime, and he's sitting on top of the hill just looking at that book. The next morning, George rose with the sun, and by midday he could see the town in the distance. He smiled. It looked lovely. There must be so many people who know how to read there, he thought, and lots of new stories they could tell me. There's George. Look what he sees. It's the town that he's looking to go to. But when he arrived, everyone was running. Some were even screaming. "Wait," said George. He showed the book to a woman rushing by. "Do you know whose this is?" he asked. "It's from the school," she shrieked and pointed to the red building. "Bear!" somebody shouted. "Call the police." How peculiar, thought George as he walked towards the school. Oh, look at this. Everyone is just running and scattering everywhere. There's George. They are all scared of him. Do you think if you saw a bear in town that you would run? I probably would run too. Inside the school, there was complete silence. Where was everybody, he thought. George peered over a desk. "Hello," he said, but there was nobody there. Oh, there he is in the school. He does not even know that the police have followed him in the school. I think they think that George is dangerous. Suddenly, there was a shout. "Freeze! Hands above your head!" George was surrounded by policemen. "What's the matter?" he asked nervously. "You're a giant, great grizzly bear," shouted the chief of police. "That's the matter." They moved towards him, holding up their shields. Oh, they had him surrounded. Poor George, his hands are in the air. He doesn't know what is going on. I don't want any trouble," said the chief. George didn't want any trouble either. It wasn't his fault he was a gigantic, great grizzly bear. He held the book tightly in his paw. Hands are above his head. But he didn't give up the book, did he? Just then, the doors burst open and in walked a little girl named Clementine with her mother. "Hey!" cried Clementine. "That's my book, and that's the bear in my book." "This is a dangerous animal," roared the chief. "Stand back." "He doesn't look dangerous to me," said Clementine. "No," said George. "I'm not that sort of bear at all. I was just hoping someone could teach me to read." "Silence!" roared the chief. Oh, there's Clementine and her mom. George still has his hands above his head, but he's not letting go of that book for anything. But Clementine wasn't listening. "I'm learning to read," she said. "We could learn together, couldn't we, Mom?" Clementine's mother looked at George. She could see he was a perfectly nice sort of bear. "I don't see why not," she said. "So you'll take responsibility for this bear, will you, madam?" asked the chief. "Well, certainly," said Clementine's mother, "and there's no need to shout." She held out her hand to George. "Very pleased to meet you," she said. "Delighted to meet you too," said George. Well, there they are, shaking hands. George moved into the summertime house at the end of Clementine's garden, and each day after school, Clementine showed him everything she'd learned. It wasn't long before George knew all the letters of the alphabet. What is that? Yes, you, my friends, have learned almost all the letters of the alphabet also. You only have a few more. Here's George and Clementine every day outside practicing and learning the letters of the alphabet. George didn't find reading easy at first. Even though he tried hard, he often made mistakes. But luckily, Clementine was a kind and patient teacher. Sometimes Even the chief of police came to see how they were getting on. He brought a book of his favorite poetry to read aloud to George. And down here at the bottom it says, well, here's George practicing. There's the chief of police. And he reads, "My love is like a red, red rose." So even he was reading with George. Then one day, Clementine said, "I bet you can read this whole book now all by yourself." George opened it and began to read. Once upon a time, there was a large brown bear who found a book lying under a tree. Does that sound familiar? Oh, I forgot to show you the pages. Here he is, first of all, painting. And there he is. He's reading to Clementine. He read the whole book, all the way to the end. "Bravo," said Clementine. "We knew you could do it." And for George, that was just the beginning. Now George can read. So I want you to think about, do bears really know how to read? We'll have to see. Oh, you're not going to believe it. Look at this. I think this teddy bear is ready to read. Bye, friends. I'll see you tomorrow.